everybody. I'm so excited. Welcome to the first webinar in the ChiroHealthUSA webinar series of 2021. This is the year of chiropractic, and I can't think of a better way to kick it off than with three of my favorite people. So Dr. B and I, we communicate via ESP. I was thinking, I really want to call him because I have this great idea for a webinar, and he emailed me like 2 minutes later. Promise y'all. And then he was like, you know what would be more fun than just you and me? We should invite our friends, Brandy and Dr. Nathan Unruh. And I was like, mind blown. Great idea. This is going to be the best kickoff ever. And that's why we have such an incredible following and why you keep showing up week after week. So to give you a little bit more background in case you do not know these beautiful, fabulous faces of chiropractic, I'm going to turn it over to the Dr. Nathan Unruh.
Wow. We better be good, guys, after that introduction. We better be really good.
Set the bar
high. All right, well, let's have some fun. Let's kick it off with this first year. I think that we're excited to be here. I like the title of this, and as I was talking to Dr. Bergquist in preparation for this conversation, stop chasing the money was a question that I asked him. I go, what do you mean what do you want by this stop chasing the money? And he started to tell me his story of owning 10 chiropractic clinics, his story of living in, of course, my great state of South Dakota and Millbank, and where he first cut his teeth. So being South Dakota boys, we kind of, we can understand a little bit more about each other, right? But then he talked to me about the billing company he started and what he learned about through the billing company. And us at Sidecar being a billing company, one of our core products, we understood a lot of the pains, not just as a doctor goes through, but then also of running a billing company and how to serve those doctors. Then this thing called software, and the thing that we all have to have, that thing that we have to document our stuff, run chiropractic statistics, and we all have to deal with it. And we always are looking for that magical software. And then I asked him, I go, why in the world would you get in the software business? And he said, well, it's because of the pain of being a chiropractor and understanding and seeing it on owning 10 chiropractic clinics, having a billing company, knowing and being around people like the other presenter with us, Brandy Brimhall, who's been an expert in compliance in chiropractic billing for over 20 years. How do I put that all into this software? And as he's telling me all this, I got this intense feeling that I never forget the day that I heard these words, $200,000. And where that came from was I was growing my chiropractic business, and I had 6 clinics at one time by about 25% a year. And I thought I was so special that I had to have this controller or office manager that could just oversee everything, and I could just do and focus on the clinical aspect. But what I ended up doing is taking my eye off the ball, taking my eye off the money. And I walked into my friend's office, and he says, Dr. Unruh, I got some news for you. We're not going to make payroll today. I went, what? I goes, no, we don't have enough money. And I said, well, just take it off the line of credit. I'm sorry, Dr. Unruh, the line of credit's maxed. And I said, what? He says, it's maxed. I go, $200,000 is maxed? Well, I didn't sleep for 90 days. How did my business get to this point? I had multiple doctors, multiple locations, and lots of patients and lots of money. But I didn't have any money? That was the pivot. I said, this will never happen again. And it was at that point in time where I started to develop systems and procedures, started our own billing company that was going to be flat rated, that wasn't going to be based upon transaction, but how do we bring value to the doctors? And how we're going to bring value is by bringing data, because data creates clarity. And Dr. Bergquist could attest to this, as well as Brandy. We've been around chiropractors our whole lives because we are chiropractors. And one thing I've learned about doctors, they lie. But numbers don't. And therefore, we'll believe any story we'll tell ourselves. Don't we? But let's use the data to help us tell the right story. And once we get clarity, clarity creates capacity. And that capacity allows us to serve the patients we want, get paid for what we're deserved, and let's stop chasing the money. Let's start looking at accounts receivable, AR, not as accounts receivable, but AR now stands for action required, which means there's, again, AR here, activities of resolution. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So in the next 30 minutes here, we're going to walk through all the moving parts of the revenue cycle management. We're going to walk through how to be, we're required as chiropractors not just to be good doctors, but good business owners. And I know, Christian, you and I have had that conversation in the past. Guys, we graduate from school as good docs, but we got to be better business owners. And then lastly, we got to use data. We got to use data to create transparency, which creates trust. And then we can couple it with training to get better. That's what we're going to cover. So with that, I'm going to introduce my co-host, Brandy Brimhall. Again, I alluded to her in the introduction here. She's amazing. Her knowledge of all the states and all the revenue cycle management and her heart of just going the extra mile for clients is amazing. She's truly a thought leader in this space and in our profession. And I'm so happy that she's a part of our sidecar team now as being one of our directors or is our director of revenue cycle management. So she's going to lead our conversation. And I already talked to you a little bit about Dr. Bergquist. He's got the pedigree. Doctor, great businessman, 10 clinics, billing company, and now HealthCore, which is truly, if you have the opportunity to take a look at this software, he's done an amazing job thinking through our eyes as the doc. All right, Brandy, I'm going to kick it to you. Teach us something.
All right, perfect. Well, I'm getting our slides started here, and we are just discussing stop chasing the money. And so all of this goes back to, in chiropractic, we always like to go to the core to find the why so that we can solve the rest of the puzzle as it relates to our patients. But we need to make sure we're doing the same thing in terms of our revenue cycle system and the fundamentals of our practice, because ultimately what happens is we find ourselves working in systems or jumping under the hood, if you will, to all of these many moving parts that we don't necessarily fully understand. We're not sure how they flow together. It's taking us additional time. It's costing us money, causes dysfunction in our practices, much the same as we educate our patients on dysfunction in their nervous system. Dysfunction in your revenue cycle systems are going to cause you to lose time. Money, of course, creates confusion with your team. Almost like sometimes I remember being in the office and sometimes feeling like I was almost set up for failure because I wasn't equipped with the tools and the understanding and the training in order to do the things that I needed to do. So that's what put me on this quest over the past number of years to make sure that I could help practices not find themselves in that situation or stay in that situation. Of course, we all can relate to disorganization, inefficiency as it relates to the revenue cycle system and all of the different parts of our practice. I was discussing with Dr. Bergquist yesterday about the software and all of the moving parts to the revenue cycle system. And I've actually even written a number of articles on how important having the right software is, because I believe it's part of the foundation of your practice. So in addition to your actual facility, the next greatest investment you're going to make, in my view, is your software, because all of the different systems you have are built around what that software is capable of doing. But that also means making sure that everyone who's using that software is properly trained and able to maximize it. Dr. Bergquist, would you like to touch on that as well?
Yeah, I think, kind of going back to the question that Dr. Unruh asked me, I believe yesterday, is like, why this path of all the different things you've done? Why this? And it really comes down to everything I've done really since I left practice in 2007 and stopped owning clinics. And I guess I've owned them periodically, but the majority of it stopped in 2009, has been done to find ways for doctors and their teams to, one, have more impact, and two, make sure they reap the rewards of that, meaning that we collect the money that's owed, and that helps everybody. If the clinic continues to grow in terms of revenue, there's no more money to be able to market more, to expand our reach, to provide better benefits, a better lifestyle. All of those things come with it. And I'm one that believes with the impact that this profession has, we should be achieving more. We should be impacting more. We should be receiving more. And everything that I do is related to, including software. Software is a combination of or a culmination of everything that I've done in the past, and looking for ways to, how do we give doctors better tools to have more impact, grow their revenue, grow their patients, all in one thing. And I look at so many things when I was in the coaching space of doctors doing this. I've seen it referred to, the best analogy was seagull management, meaning seagull is, we're floating around at 10,000 feet, just hovering around, not necessarily knowing what's going on in the weeds, especially when it comes to our financials. And then at the end of the month, when we have a moment like Dr. Unruh mentioned that he had years ago, then we swoop down in and we crap all over everything, and then away we go and we're out again. And never really, and it's because a couple things. One, we don't have the technology tools to be transparent, to know what's going on. We don't necessarily train or give our team the right tools to be able to do their jobs. And then we manage our business by what's in the checking account at the end of the month. And that's just horrible business practice. And we can do better, and we deserve better. And a lot of the things that we're going to talk about, and we'll go through components of the revenue cycle, but we're going to do it at a higher level. And just know that this conversation isn't about necessarily teaching you mechanics of anything today. We can't do that in a half an hour. And certainly we're willing, if you know, or you're part of an organization and you want us to come, Brandy and I can certainly come and do that, and we'll break it down over a period of hours and go into the nitty-gritty. Today is about just kind of putting it in your head of what you should be thinking about and what you should be evaluating in terms of the systems you are. And Dr. Unruh brought up systems, and that's one of the reasons why, as a software, we wanted to go to a billing company that had things dialed in like Sidecar. It's the reason they're a strategic partner of ours and who we refer HealthCore clients to for billing, is because of systems. And Dr. Unruh doesn't even know this. I was talking to a doctor the other day. He actually brought up Dr. Unruh and Sidecar and how they have systems dialed in, both in the clinic end and in the billing end, like nobody has ever seen. And that's why we use those, is because if you're going to do that kind of service, which I'm the one that believes probably 70% of chiropractors should be outsourcing their billing anyway, get it out of the office so you can focus on growing your practice, serving people, giving a great patient experience, getting great results, and growing your impact. But if you're going to do that, do it to somebody who's going to follow the process all the way through. There's all kinds of ways, and I've been in the billing business for many years. There's all kinds of billing companies that will charge you a low percentage and then ultimately not follow through and work your AR. Well, that's easy if that's what you want, and you got to have a billing person as well that's going to continue to hound on the AR, or you outsource it and know that somebody's going to bang away at that from start to finish and get the job done and get the money in the bank. So I'll kick it back to you, Brandy, and then we can kind of get into the specific steps around the revenue cycle wheel.
Absolutely. So what happens, as we talk all the time about time is money as well, and with all the different moving parts to the revenue cycle system, we often don't realize how many there are until we start to recognize that our accounts receivable is accumulating, that patients aren't being collected over the counter, that the patient with the same $45 statement that's been sent out 11 months in a row now still hasn't paid. At some point, that $45 patient invoice is becoming an expense to your practice. In addition to your team not having the confidence in really knowing what they should be doing, and having, being a CA myself and being responsible for the revenue cycle system in practice, I like to know that I'm confident in what I'm doing. I'm confident in my software, and that the numbers, the accounts receivable, the billing, the collections, the communications with patients is all intact. So really making sure you have the proper tools and resources and the right person or people at the helm of your revenue cycle management, as well as the software. In addition to that is going to be the two pieces that set your practice up to be the most financially successful. Would you agree, Dr. Unruh?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote down something, and again, anytime I come into a conversation like this, if I can take one thing away, I want to take it away. And here's what I just wrote down, Brandy, what you said. The $45 statement becomes an expense to your practice. Brilliant. Docs, if you get nothing else, get that, because she's so bang on. It's an expense to it. So again, I love what Dr. Bergquist said, because I hear this every day. Are they working my AR? I used to hear that all the time in my own practices. And I don't know, Dr. Bergquist, you probably did too. I don't even know what that means. I do today, but I didn't then. And I know so many doctors have felt it and they feel the same way. Working my AR. Well, here's the reality. Let's take the systems and procedures and go upstream. Exactly what Brandy just said, because here's a fact, and we got to use data, and this is why I love Dr. Bergquist and what he's doing with the software. Since January 1st at Sidecar, in our Sidecar billing service, many of our clients we do backup verifications for as part of their service. Why? Because we know if we catch it up front and we get the right verification and we collect at the time of service, like Brandy said, we have such a healthier business and much happier patients. Here's the reality. Only 36% of people were doing it correctly. 36%. That sucks. So how's that answer your question there, Brandy?
I want to jump in on that whole the statement, the $45 statement, not to belabor that, but that's where some of our software changes came from. Kind of years ago in our billing company, and we had some shortage of a staff for a short period of time, and I ended up bringing statements. I brought statements to my house for my wife and I to fold and stuff to put in the envelope. And as a process of, here I am, 20 years in the profession, I'm folding and stuff and I'm looking at some of these statements, and it's like, what is going on? There's like 2 pages of S8990 wellness visits on these statements that are getting sent out for months and months and months. And it kind of poked this idea of, what if should we need patient statements? Hypothetically speaking, if we did our job at the front end, and just flip back one slide there, Brandy. If we did a great insurance verification and we knew exactly what the patient's responsibility was going to be, and we let them know up front, and either they prepaid it, they put them on a payment plan, or we pay at the time of service, one of those 3, and we did a great job, and then we followed through with the AR all the way through the process. So what we told them was going to happen did happen. Would there be a need for a patient statement at the end? At the end of that is, hypothetically, no. Is that possible? No. But it's still a goal. We could still manage how we're doing in our business by how many statements. Could we lower the number of statements that we're sending out, because we're constantly improving and refining the systems at the front end? First thing is insurance verification. Dr. Unruh mentioned that. Are we actually getting on the phone with these people? Because the quick and easy insurance verification, most of it doesn't work. And TriZetto's is getting better. Most of it's just pure crap. You're not getting enough, because we all know that happens as well. But we're doing a good, solid insurance verification, which is what she's showing on the screen. And we've got a place in the software we can enter all of the details of that. And it's more than just the deductible. It's more than just what's out of pocket max. It's all of the different services and it's simple. If you're doing straight chiro and it's just an office visit, that's fairly simple. But if you're adding additional services and additional codes in, we have to know how all of those are dealt with on an insurance verification, so we can give patients accurate expectation of what their responsibility for care is going to be, and take care of that financial portion. Some states you can't prepay, well then put them on a payment plan. Make sure that it's done over the counter at the time of service, but never should we be pushing that off to say, well, we'll just see what happens, and then 3-6 months later send you a statement. the best time for patients to know what their responsibility is when they have the most value to care, which is when their issues are affecting something important in their life. 6 months later, the issue's gone, they're back to normal. They forgot some of that. That's not the time to send them a statement for $1,000. Has to be dealt with front end.
And Dr. Bergquist, let me just echo that and plus what you just said. When you and I first started practice, that might have been okay, but they've moved the cheese. In today's day and age, consumers don't consume things like that anymore. If I send you a statement after you go fill up for gas and you paid at the pump, you'd be ticked off. That's what we're doing with our patients. Healthcare we've got to change that. This idea of statements, 90% of it can be 100%. 90% of it can be 100% right. That 10%, you have systems and procedures for those outliers. So I agree with you 100%. Shoot for excellence, allow some grace, know the grace is in that 10%, and have systems and procedures to clean up the 10%. Man, we're stealing your show. I'm sorry. Sorry, not sorry. No.
Well, and the verification is so important too, because it's really almost like the mortar to the brick as far as this is how you establish how you're billing. This is how you establish your communication to your patients. This is how you set up the patient's account. It's part of that. It's how you communicate with your payers. And so that's used internally and externally with your patients. So it's such a valuable tool that our practices need to make sure that we're doing, because without that, then we're not able to collect appropriately over the counter from our patients. And it really is a kick the can effect. If we're not collecting over the counter, what does that do? It costs us time and money now, but we're also putting someone else. And sometimes in our offices for a long time, it was me. If I wasn't collecting over the counter, then I was also the person who was having to print and sort and envelope patient invoices. So it was costing additional time, money, and efficiency for the practice. So those types of things. And again, being a biller and CA myself, oftentimes we don't think, especially if we're not really confident or certain of our role, we don't think that there needs to be or of a different next step other than what we were shown. And in a lot of our chiropractic offices, the person responsible for the revenue cycle system wasn't even aware they were going to be when they first started working there, which again puts the practice at risk of losing a lot of time and money. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think yeah, exactly. Somebody got moved into that position, maybe because they've been in the office for a long period of time and they were good at the front desk, and now they got moved into a billing position that never really wanted or certainly didn't expect and weren't well trained for. But the other side of this whole collecting up front thing and is the idea of most patients want an equitable relationship with their clinic. And when that relationship gets off balance, if they feel it's off balance, they will quit. So we're afraid to let them know how much their responsibility is going to be up front. That somehow we have some kind of financial fear about that. But when a patient knows that they're building this account, I'm going to have to pay for this. I don't know how much it is, but I'm going to have to pay for this sometime. They will quit. They may not even know that's the reason they quit, but the relationship is not equitable anymore. And that's the other reason why we got to get away from this fear of presenting that up front. The next issue in terms of being proactive is making sure that we're reviewing things before they ever go out. So we're dealing with things effectively. Our software is doing a good job of letting us know how much that patient owes. So if that's at the time of service, we can collect that over the counter. Now, when we get into the claims part, there's two areas that we have to be proactive on. One, flip back to the charge entry screen there, Brandy. One is at the charge entry that we're able to look at those charges as they go through to make sure, is everything right on there? Are the diagnosis pointers right? Are my modifiers correct? Does this look like the right number of units? That we're doing that all at charge entry. Then again, we're doing it at the bulk billing review before it goes to the clearinghouse. Too many people are just sending stuff through. They're just zipping it out saying, well, the clearinghouse will filter this out. Of course, they'll filter it out. Some of it they won't catch, and it gets all the way to the carrier. Now we've got it all the way down the line. It comes back into our system. We've got to start going back through it again. Now it's part of our AR. which is taking us time and money to go back through. And we could have resolved that at the front end if we make sure that our billing team is trained. We make sure that our billers know before you hit send, whether it's to paper statements or to EDI, the electronic billing, that we reviewed all these claims and they have a high probability of getting paid. Then we hit send, and now we're proactively managing our money.
Yeah, I mean, everything you just said, I just got to echo at that is, I mean, truly, if we can get everybody, what you said, the word numerous times. Did you hear yourself say it? Trained? The trouble is that we expect the people we're paying 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 bucks an hour to know some of this stuff. They don't know. But guess who trains them? The doctor, who doesn't really know, because we're too busy doing what we do. That's why it's so important to have a team. And I know, Brandy, you're going to speak to that a little bit.
Yep, absolutely. So again, going back to being a CA myself, I was working on the front desk. And when I ended up being responsible for all of the revenue cycle systems, it's unimaginably overwhelming. And the person responsible for training me was the doctor, who didn't know what to do either. So that left me on this quest of attending every seminar. And that was even before the days of webinars. So I was driving to Denver all the time to attend everything I could possibly attend to understand how all of these moving parts went together. Because if I missed something, then we were not submitting clean claims. We were at heightened risk of vulnerability, audit, records requests, and all of those things. And I don't know if many of you have read the book, The Purple Cow, but if you're looking at a field of brown cows, it's consistent and it's expected, but the purple cow is the one that you notice. And I think in practices, we all want to be the purple cow. We want to be the one that stands out among our peers, except I would argue that when it comes to our billing systems and billing practices, we don't want to be the purple cow, because that increases the vulnerability and risk to our practices quite significantly. So again, going back to really the fundamentals, and I love the fundamentals because that's what everything is built upon, is the fundamentals. And I was actually speaking with Dr. Unruh within the past day or two about, any structure that you're building. You can't build a solid, large structure on a cracked or weak foundation. The same thing applies to your practice if your revenue cycle system has gaps or weaknesses, or there's pieces to it that are missing. And so that's what we're talking about today, making sure that we're really highlighting those many critical areas.
I think one other thing, if you're questioning when they mention training and you're like, well, I don't know, I think I do a pretty good job. One way to determine whether you're training beyond, kind of the typical ones would be, a doctor is, how many W-2s do you send out at the end of the year? And what I mean by that is I've coached some clinics that have actually small clinics, small teams, and they've sent out 12 W-2s in a year because their people are turning over. They're coming, they're there for a while, and they leave. Why? Nobody wants to fail. Nobody wants to feel like they're doing a crappy job. And yet we're giving them poor tools. We're giving them poor training. We're maybe giving them poor technology to do their job in the first place. So every day they're coming to work saying, man, I wonder what I'm going to screw up today. Who wants to work in that environment? The ones who have really good, back to the systems part, they're really good training systems where they're, every week they're doing training on certain aspects and they're giving their team the tools to succeed. They don't have that. They have teams. I was in one of Dr. Unruh's clinic here not too long ago, and this thing runs like a machine, and you can tell the people that are there are super happy to be there and love their jobs because they've been well trained, because they feel like they're a success all day long, helping and serving people. And that's an environment we all want to work into. So that's something to think about. If you're questioning whether I'm doing a good job of training, look back and see how long are you retaining the team? How happy is your team to be there? That might give you a good indication of that. And then, this is the data analytics from the HealthCore software. It's kind of the next step in this. It's, certainly that's part of training too, but this is the hub of everything. You want to train, you want to know where your systems are weak, you've got to use data. And Dr. Unruh referred to that at the very beginning of this call. We have to have objective measures to know what do we need to fix, where can we focus our time and energy and training on improving systems in our office. This is where we're going to get that. You can't fix everything at once. Doesn't matter how many analytics we provide, you can only fix a certain part of those at once. but these tools are going to be where you're going to look for that information. This data is where you're going to be analyzing to say, do I need to focus more on how do we create a better experience to retain more people because they're not completing their care plan? Or do I need to focus on some part of our revenue cycle in terms of the billing aspect, and we're actually doing the services, but we're just letting it all slip away, or we're letting 20% of it slide because we're not working our AR. And one of the things I see is people are willing to spend money on marketing, and they'll keep grinding, and they'll be out at all of these events. Back when we could be at events, obviously we can't be at events right now, but they do all these things to try to grow their practice. And that's amazing. We should do that to expand our reach. But on the other hand, they just let part of their money slip away as almost a cost of doing business because they don't want to work it, or they work with a billing company that doesn't work it. It's just lost money. It's like, and Brandy brought this up on a call yesterday, I think. It's like, what's the point of bringing in all these extra services and all these kind of shiny silver bullets to fix your practice or fix, if you don't have the structure down, if you don't have the infrastructure to support it, it doesn't matter. So get the infrastructure first, and then once that's dialed in and you want to bring on some additional revenue streams, whether that's decomp or therapeutic exercise you want to do, whatever it is, then you have the financial infrastructure to support that, and you've got the analytics to be able to analyze it along the way. And Dr. Unruh, I know you've got something to say about that because that's kind of your sweet spot.
Well, I mean, you're getting me all excited here. I'm chomping at the bit. Just listen to what you're saying because I can't agree more with what you're saying. And I think the thing that's, if you look at this slide that Brandy has on the screen right now, it's data analytics. But this is downstream of what happens upstream. So key performance indicators are what we can measure upstream to drive what's downstream. So for instance, I look at the screen, I say, okay, let's say the retention or the case average here. Well, most docs don't even know what a normal case average is. I'm going to tell you what it is right now. $1,500 to $2,500 is what the typical patient's lifetime value is to a chiropractic practice. Now, where are you at in that? If you don't measure it, you'll never know. Then you can then go even deeper into the key performance indicators and start to look at active retention, because retention is an old number, old chiropractic statistics that it really isn't relevant in today's day and age, but active retention is. And so when you start looking at these analytics, then do exactly what Brandy and Dr. Bergquist said. Build the foundation. Because here's the deal. Of all the chiropractic businesses that we analyze, rarely is it a new patient problem. It's an operational problem. So if we talk about a value chain being, number one, the operations. That's the foundation that Brandy speaks of. Then it moves to patient experience. What do patients really want in today's day and age? We have the data. We know what they want. Now, how do we build systems and procedures around it? Which then drives on the next phase of the value chain, referrals. Then once we get that dialed in, then we can fan the flame with advertising tactics. But what do we all do? Like Dr. Bergquist said, run to the shiny object. Let's go get our face on social media as much as we can, because somehow they care what we're eating right now, and that's going to get them into our office. Wrong. And I don't mean to be disrespectful there, but I see it too much. Focus on being a good business owner, using the data analytics, using the operational components, having the right technology and the right team to help create the business you want. I did want to say something. So Brandy, go from there. What are your thoughts there?
Well, actually, I was just thinking, I'm all in favor and love adding, new things and trying new things in the offices. But anytime that you have questions or concerns, or if your answer as it relates to your revenue cycle system is, I don't know, or you have just the expectation that someone is handling it, definitely make sure that you follow through to make sure that most of the time, and I know all three of us agree that when practices are looking for additional money, it's already there in their practice. We don't need to go outward most of the time in order to find that money. It's lost somewhere or left somewhere in the many moving parts to our revenue cycle system, or ill-managed numbers. And Dr. Unruh, I hear you mention all the time when you're reviewing this with practices, what gets monitored gets managed.
Absolutely.
So moving into that, with our revenue cycle system, we talked about dysfunction, interference, and of course, as we know, not to go through all of this, but doctors are all the time, and even CAs, I speak to both every single day. We have questions that we don't know. So what do? We guess, we assume, or we set something to the side. That costs us time, costs us money, increases our vulnerability. That to-do list that we have just keeps growing. And of course, as we see our collections start to be on a downward spiral, and again, going into the revenue cycle system and all its moving parts, you can see how that happens. And we'll show you those in a couple of minutes, but just to touch on how all of these, how things can slip through the cracks and how dysfunction happens, and why I've done in-office billing. I was an in-office biller for all of our practices and I loved it, but it takes the right person or the right people to understand and know how all of those pieces are woven together so that all of those can be kept in motion. If you find that your accounts receivable is getting touched on when someone has time or when you stumble upon an open claim, that's not bringing money into your practice, but it's putting you at risk of losing money. The older the money gets from our insurance companies and from our patients, the more difficult it is to collect. Also, just having one person in your office who knows what to do, that happens with a lot of practices, and the vulnerability is almost immeasurable in my view, because that person who knows what to do has moved on to another job, and now all of a sudden you're left in your practice trying to figure out what in the world is going on and what in the world to do to get your money collected and your claims sent out. And I'm sure that both of you have experienced that same thing also.
No, I've never been held hostage by an employee. Yeah, I think it's a great statement. I mean, again, I think if you got to look yourself in the mirror, and when you're being honest with yourself, if you can say that right now, if Sally leaves, I'm in trouble, that's not a good place to be. And I think we've all been there, right? I think, when Dr. Bergquist was speaking to team members, we know in the chiropractic industry right now, the typical tenure of a tech is 18 months. Now, many of you will say, well, I have had Sally for 20 years. And you may well have. I've had employees of mine for many years. But that doesn't mean that's a good thing. It could be, but it doesn't necessarily mean it. And if they left tomorrow, what would happen to your business? And I think that was one of the biggest frustration, Dr. Bergquist, that you had, and I know I've had. And one of the reasons I started a billing company, I got tired of that person leaving, and I also got tired of that feeling of if they left, I'm in trouble. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. And it, in respect to the doctors who are in that position, there's only so much time, and we want to focus on serving people and taking care of people, and we just want to kind of keep a blind eye. As long as there's money coming in, I'm just going to assume that it's okay. But then when the wheels fall off of that, suddenly we're completely distracted from that very thing, and now we can't focus on anything other than, oh my God, my practice is going under because the wheels fell off in my billing. And that's one of the reasons why I just believe that a lot of clinics should outsource. And that's not to discredit any great billing team members on this call, because there's probably plenty, and if that's the case, wonderful. And I think that's amazing. But if there's a struggle there, either you're somebody who doesn't want to be doing this, or you've got somebody in place that's in the wrong seat in the bus. And I can give you an example of that. I took somebody in my practice, and because she was great at the front desk, I was like, well, why not put her responsible for my money? She'd been here a lot of years, and she was a people person, and I put her in this little room with all the computer and the financials and the paperwork and all this stuff, and I made her life hell by doing that. I put her in the wrong seat in the bus, and so sometimes we have that to deal with. But it is the most important decision that you have to make of, do I have the right person to do this that's going to stay on top of this? Do I have the systems in place to not abdicate to this person and then do the seagull management thing, but to delegate to this person and then be able to go into my tools and my reports to be able to see, all right, how are they doing? Where are the red flags? As an owner, I should be able to determine that. I should be able to look at reports and system and say, how is my team doing in every aspect of the practice? There should be data to show you that. If there isn't, then you have to look into that and figure out how you're going to go, if you want to create a great business along with a great chiropractic practice.
Absolutely. I think one of the office's greatest fears, especially the doctors, is, well, if I outsource, am I losing control? And really, having been on both sides of it, I've been an in-office biller. I love in-office billing. I've been outsourced biller, and I also love outsourced billing. The best answer for the practice is truly what's best for them. But just from having experienced it myself for a long time from both perspectives, practices really do gain control, because you should be able to communicate with your outsourced billing service just as though you would your team in your practice. The difference is your team in your practice is distracted with answering the phones, with filing, and with returning, phone calls for reactivations and all the other stuff that happens. But outsourced billers is like your attorney is to legal, or your accountant is to your finance. It's a professional group or professional organization that's their training. That's what they do, and they know and understand how to navigate and communicate all of the many moving parts to your revenue cycle system, so they're not navigating blindly like often what happens in the practices. Would anyone else like to add upon that?
I think you're bang on. Go ahead, Dr. Bergquist.
No, keep going. I think you're doing good.
Okay. Perfect. So there's many moving parts to the revenue cycle system, and I just want to give you a really high bird's eye glance of what that is and why it's so important, because it really is all woven together so tightly. And if something is missing, or something is insufficient, or something is skipped, or something is perhaps not done as regularly as it should be, then your practice is going to be losing time. It's going to be losing money. Doctors lose confidence in their team. The team loses confidence in the doctors. All of these different types of things happen. So you look at, the documentation is then translated into code. It's just same story, different language, right? And so that includes proper use of our HCPCS, modifiers, all of those types of things for coding. Making sure that we verify benefits, verify them properly, and communicate to our patients. And we've already touched upon that. Or over-the-counter collections. Again, what's not collect over-the-counter kicks the can to whoever is invoicing. And there's an awful lot of practices out there that I ask almost every day, how often are you invoicing your patients? And many of them tell me they're not at all, because they simply don't have time, or they're not familiar enough with their software to really be confident in the patient balances. I know that the both of you speak with offices on that same matter as well, which is also why Dr. Bergquist made sure that the software was able to very efficiently function to communicate to the team, easy to learn, so that you know that you know. And then Dr. Unruh is also on with offices all the time on these very matters, right, Dr. Unruh?
Yeah, too often, in the thing that when you say that people don't send their statements or invoice, I think is the word you used, is it's really even a little, I'm going to take it a little another level deep. They either don't do it because they don't have time, like you said, or they don't do it because they don't want the patient to see what they're really billing. So it's the wild, wild west of billing. I'm going to bill 4, 5, 6 codes or whatever. And you know what? Let's just see what the insurance company is going to pay. And then I surely don't want to send that to a patient. So again, it's also, that's why I love the statement process, because the best forensic of what your business model is, where the gaps in your business model are, and what's falling apart upstream. I love the statement process. Just like Dr. Bergquist was talking about going home with his wife and going through those. It's a pretty sobering event, isn't it, Dr. Bergquist? I've done it too many times. I just did it for an office myself the other day. I was looking at it going, look at these statements. So it's a powerful thing that we want to make sure that we are being honest with ourselves when we're looking at the statements, because they tell us so much.
Absolutely. And of course, our claims submission, making sure we're following up and working that old money. Once it starts to age, it becomes more difficult to collect. So making sure that we have systems in place to address that, dealing with our appeals and knowing how to communicate with third-party payers in the most efficient way to do that. Of course, managing the AR is one of my most favorite things in practices, because that is where all of our old money lands. That should be active money. It's if whatever isn't moving, air, blood, water, is dying. And the same with the money that's sitting in your AR being unattended or ill-attended. So we need to get that money back in motion. It should be in your business operating account instead of sitting stagnant in your AR numbers and with your patients and with your third-party payers. Making sure you know how to read EOBs. It happens almost every day that I'm receiving EOBs across my desk that have just been so mechanically posted into the system without being read by line item. This causes practices to lose a lot of money. We need to make sure that there's the right people that know how to take the time to put the attention to the detail onto our EOBs, because that also, and I'm sure both of you having, being doctors, have had staff that, it's just so easy to become robots and post what's paid and then move on to the next thing.
Yeah, and that's billing teams and and billing companies do some of that same thing, where they don't go after what they deserve. They don't put up a fight for what's owed. And I think the last point that I want to make, and then I'll be out and you guys can wrap it up. The first thing is an apology. If you came on here and you're hoping for kind of this linear progression of a PowerPoint and just a very systematic program, I apologize to you, because we just wasted 45 minutes of your time. But we came on here knowing that the three of us are super passionate about this topic from very different perspectives. Me from a technology, Dr. Unruh from a coaching and billing, and Brandy from being a revenue cycle expert for genius for many, many years. We came on here with the idea of, let's not rehearse, let's not plan this. Let's just get on and dialogue about something that's super important. And my second point is kind of a spin off of that, because the days of an insurance-based practice are over. The days of sending claims and knowing if I just send enough, I'll get enough. I don't have to worry about sending statements. I don't have to worry about collecting over the counter. Maybe some will pay, some won't. I won't follow up. I won't really know. But as long as 80% of it comes back, I'm good. Those days are over, people. And I get it. In some states, you think it still exists. I promised you it's not going to be there in either at the end of this year or at the end of next year. It's going away, which means we've got to dial it in. As a profession, we have to dial in our systems to know where our money is, to know how we're going to manage that, so we're getting what's owed both from the insurance company and from the patient, because they got great care, they got great results, they're willing to pay for it. We can't shy away from that, and that was the point of the three of us jumping on together. So with that, I'll tap out and we'll let you two wrap it up.
Thanks.
All right, Dr. Unruh, would you like to take us across the finish line here?
Yeah, I think that I just want to, echo everything that Dr. Bergquist just said. And I think one of the things that you want to make sure that when you look for what's the next step? What do we need to do at this point after we hear all this information? What's the action items? And I think first thing you need to discover where you're at. And in that discovery process is a part of just then you can take a step back and see what support you need. So how do you do a discovery? Well, first of all, discover more about HealthCore Tech. Go do a demo with Dr. Bergquist and his team on, hey, what does a software look like that does the things that we talked about? What does a software look like that has the analytics and data to help you make data-driven decisions for your business? The other thing, you can come in and you can text right now, 44222. Text 44222 you text that number, we'll send you an audit. It's a billing risk and opportunities audit. We'll go through that audit, look at where your risks are, where your opportunities are, then jump on the phone and have a conversation with you. And everything with us at Psycher starts with a conversation, because you know what? Everybody doesn't need the same thing. Everybody may need, maybe you need an AR cleanup service right now. Maybe you need a full A to Z billing company. Maybe you don't need 100% A to Z, but then what are the other options? Maybe you just need the billing help desk that Brandy started, that we can just give you guidance along the way. But that really is a discovery process. And so I would say demo HealthCore with Dr. Bergquist, text that number or go to Sidecar Edge or call that number and we can schedule a conversation, or just do the audit. And you just text 44222 for that audit. And I want to, as we're sitting here on the ChiroHealthUSA webinar, I don't want you to forget the resources that they have. When it comes to money, they've got amazing resources about how do you stay compliant. There's not a day in my offices in the day that we don't talk to clients. Your fee schedule needs to be tight as a foundation. And your standard fee needs to be column 1. Column 2 needs to be your ChiroHealthUSA fee. And you need to know how to communicate that to each and every single patient. So I just want you to imagine this day, and this I'm closing here, Christy. Imagine this day of having a practice built on systems and procedures, having a software that can do the things it says it's going to do, having billing procedures that are along the fair exchange that become a retention tool, not a deterrent to your practice. And then imagine the day your debt is paid. You're serving as many patients as you ever wanted to serve, and you're proud to be a chiropractor because you can do that. And I'm so proud to be with this team, with ChiroHealthUSA, Dr. Bergquist, and Brandy to help bring this information. Now reach out. We're here to support you. Christy?
Oh, I love you guys. There's so many nuggets of truth in here. I was like, oh, we need a webinar on this and this and this and this and this. I basically just wrote a commentary in the chat log. So y'all forgive me for my overjoyed excitement. But I think the one thing I'm going to say about everything that y'all talked about, which just makes my heart sing, and Facebook right now, y'all got tagged in a lot of stuff while y'all were talking today, but is that you can implement anything you want to in a practice. It will not be successful without procedures in place. Everything fails if there's not a checks and balances along the way. And I have experienced that, and that's with any job, any business whatsoever. And every business, chiropractic, it doesn't matter. Every business I've ever worked in my entire, we're not going to talk about how many years, but it's been a minute. And I've been here for a decade, is that when you don't have those checks and balances in place, if you don't have those procedures in place, you're just not going to reach those goals that you want to, and you can't sustain it. You just can't. And I'm a huge proponent of training. I'm all over everybody within our entire company, every division of our company, about having a training plan and procedure. Do not deviate from the training plan and procedure. We hesitate to hire till we are so deep in the weeds that when that poor person comes in, it is welcome to the company and hang on to your hats, because here you go. And we throw them into the fire without giving them any way, shape, or form to even be successful. We set them up for failure. And as we're going through a hiring phase right now, I mean, that's just been what my primary focus is. And so everything that y'all said, I'm like loving. Yes, Brandy is an absolute genius, by the way. She's one of my favorite geniuses in the entire world. I have letters behind my name because of Brandy. No joke. I survived that. And Dr. Unruh and Dr. Bergquist, they've been there. They've done that. They've been in this business a really long time. And it takes a lot to run a practice and then have such a commitment to the success of this profession, to your success, that they dedicate all of their time. I really don't know how y'all do anything else, to helping serve the profession by teaching other practices what they learned, where they failed, where they tripped, where they didn't have success, and how they overcame that, and what it took to make it possible. And it's just the little things. You got to focus on the little things, and one little thing at a time. That's why I asked the question, what's the one thing you heard so far that you want to focus on in 2021? And post it in here and tell me, because then we're going to have a webinar about that so that you can be successful, because that's what I want. I want everybody who watches the webinar series to be successful and to get the benefits of all of my friends in chiropractic, like Dr. Unruh and Dr. Bergquist and Brandy. I love them too, but I mean, y'all just don't even know. I'm a #1 fan of Brandy Brimhall. Hello, I'm the president of her fan club.
We all are. We all are.
Yes, we are.
You can search her on our website. She doesn't even work for ChiroHealthUSA. So tell us if you have any questions for these amazing panelists today, please share them now. We'll ask them really quick before you inhale your lunch and get back to the business of treating your patients. Or if you have the afternoon off, to woosah and focus and relax before you get back to doing it tomorrow. But if there was something that you took out of this and you're like, I really want to know more about this, even if it was what Dr. Bergquist said, right people, right seat. I have so many friends in chiropractic, and they reward their outstanding MVP employee who does an amazing job by giving them a job that just kills their soul. There are some people who are meant to be at the front desk, and there are other people who thrive in billing and insurance. I would die in billing and insurance. It's not me. I would miss interacting with all the people. But I love that. Right people, right seat. Right people, right seat. That is so important. So what was it? Come on. Y'all are just not real chatty in 2021. Anything y'all want to say? Because I could just talk. I'm so excited to be back.
I got nothing else. We're just super grateful you hosted us. We're super appreciative of the service that ChiroHealthUSA provides, and it's in pretty much every clinic that I'm aware of. So we can't even sell it for you anymore, Christy, because everybody uses it, and if they're not, they should be. So, but we appreciate everything you do for us, Christy, and the profession.
Well, I appreciate y'all taking the time to be on our webinar series today, and it's so good to see y'all. I miss people so much. I might strategically pick where I speak just so I can go visit my friends. And I haven't seen them in person in a really long time. Dr. Unruh and I have been trying to plan a trip for me to come visit him for 9 months.
I know. Well, it's time.
It is time.
Yeah.
Hasta la vista, COVID. I got to get back. So I'm going to wrap this up a little early because I want y'all to have some time to think about it. But y'all have my email address, everybody on here. So reach out and let me know. What are you looking for in 2021? What do you want to know more about? Make sure you check out Health Core. Make sure you check out Sidecar. They offer amazing services to help you be successful in practice. Reach out to Brandy. You can Google her too. She's my go-to girl for like everything. But I love it. She doesn't just answer questions. She provides answers, and then she provides you a pile of paperwork to tell you why exactly how she answered that question. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for being here today. And you don't have to request a replay because everybody always does, but you don't have to. If you are here listening now, you will automatically get a link to the replay in about an hour. It will also be posted on our website at ChiroHealthUSA.com/webinars. On the right-hand side, click on Visit the Archive. Now, if you're like me and you're on every newsletter, mailing list, and whatever within chiropractic, you've received 5,001 emails today about updates to PPP loans for chiropractors. And all the announcements and what's going on in 2021. Great news is, I actually had a conversation with somebody about this 2 weeks ago. We have a webinar plan to address those very questions next week on Tuesday at 2:15 Eastern Standard Time. So if you haven't registered, make sure you do. Even if you miss it, you'll get a link to the replay. And then I have a new speaker coming on the week after that, Dr. Christine Gertz. Not a lot of people know her, but if you do, she is huge into research and data. I did believe I heard Dr. Bergquist talking about data, and Dr. Unruh talked about data, and Brandy talked about data, and you need to know your data. And remember that the very people you're billing out insurance to know more about your practice than you do. But what else can that data tell us, and how can it help us grow? And Dr. Gertz is going to tell us that. So that'll be in 2 weeks. Make sure you check out our website, register for all the webinars. We cannot wait to see you succeed in 2021. And with that, I will say, good night, good afternoon, goodbye. Have a fantastic week, a phenomenal weekend, and I'll see you next week. Bye, y'all.
Thanks, Christy.
Thanks, Christy.
I miss y'all already.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you.
Bye.
If you need anything, let me know. All right. Talk soon.